Hey guys, welcome back. A few things before we get started. Don't forget we have our promo codes available for Hopewell Farm CBD if you're looking to try a new CBD. Hopewell Farm is amazing. They have some incredible products. They don't just have the oils, they have the skin salves, and they have some other stuff. You get 10% off all of their products with promo code Journey to Truth 10. That link is below. Omnia Radiation Balancer, if you don't know what that is, it is a device you put on any, or a patch you put on any radiating device, Wi-Fi routers, cell phones, computers, TVs, whatever it is. It balances the harmful EMF field, that are radiation that's coming in, and it turns it into something that's actually beneficial for your body. It doesn't block it, but it harmonizes it. It balances your own energy field. They also have pendants, which you can wear, and it also you can't really stick a patch to yourself, but you can wear a pendant, and it helps just protect yourself so we're not getting bombarded with all those negative frequencies. Promo code TRUTH, all caps, gets you 10% off of those products. And we are also now affiliated with our friend Mason Fury with Merlin's Lab, and he makes these amazing orgone pyramids. This is the largest one. There's different sizes. These things are incredible. They're made with real copper. The capstones are kind of unique to what he's doing. These also aid in blocking and protecting from EMFs. So if you're looking for something like that, you can also get 10% off his pyramids with promo code Journey to Truth, all caps. All of those links are below. And as always, our Teespring merchandise is 20% off all the time with promo code 20 and back. That link's below also. All right, the boring part's over. Today we are joined by Ileana, the Star Traveler. She's an author, experiencer of UFOs, ETs, secret space programs, past lives, all the above. She's written a few great books. We're going to get into some amazing stuff, in particular surrounding the technology that's used in space and these programs, even our military, just everything that's available out there that we don't have access to. We're going to get into a lot of that and her involvement with some of that. And who knows what else. Welcome to the show.
Hi, nice to meet you guys.
Great to have you. Yeah, great to have you. Yeah. Nice to meet you also. We're looking forward to this. I will turn it over to you. Allow yourself to give a little bit of a better intro. Just let people, our audience who might not know who you are, let them know, how you got into this and what you're all about, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, so my name is Ileana, and that's my spiritual name. And I am a psychic. I am an Akashic Records reader. I'm an experiencer having to do with the secret space program, UFOs, ETs. And I have had experiences with extraterrestrial abductions since the age of 2. I had been abducted by reptilians. Those were the very first memories that I had recurring of being taken to Rostov basis underground by black drowser reptilians and sort of green, yellow shrub invictus looking reptilians, where my immune system had been changed and blood had been changed when I was a little girl. It was to try to kill me, but it didn't kill me. My energy saved me. And I had been abducted until 10 years old by these reptilians doing all kinds of, I would say, experiments with my blood and my immune system. So those were the first memories I've had of dealing with extraterrestrials, not pleasant ones. And then I've had memories of just being a star traveler in different past lives, traveling to different planets, learning about different extraterrestrials, mediating peace negotiations and stuff like that, and just talking with the different ETs, what their needs were, what their cultures were, meeting different councils, federations in past lives. So I've had memories of that resurfacing quite a bit since 2013. And then in 2014, I had the secret space program stuff come in memory recalls, where basically I remember serving on Mars doing the 16 back quantum time leap program with planetary corporations and doing a lot of weird type of tech stuff, regeneration medicine, all that stuff. So this is basically my experiences in working with a reptilian insectoid hybrid guide on the Mars basis named Zagor. He's basically 14 feet tall. He's green, has black eyes, and wears a smart suit that's black and red. So he's always been around. He's helped me to protect my energy. He's helped me to navigate all this program stuff. And he was also recently involved in some genetic interesting things in Alexander the Great's tomb under Jordan. And that's a whole other big story.
Wow.
That's really interesting. Wasn't it Harry Hubbard? So there's a theory also that, was it Alexander the Great made it to the US?
Yeah.
And they think that they're like, there's a location not far from us where his tomb could have been. They found a bunch of Egyptian gold and all this stuff.
Artifacts.
And they think that it ties to him. So I don't know what's true or what's going on with that, but there's no doubt that there's evidence of an ancient Egyptian culture that had made its way into southern Illinois. Even some of the towns are named like Cairo and stuff like that after Egypt. And they found gold and artifacts there. So that Alexander the Great has been tied to that, but they can't prove anything, obviously. So I'm curious about that.
Well, his tomb is actually under Jordan. It was originally supposed to be buried in Alexandria in Egypt because he founded the city of Alexandria, the Library of Alexandria.
Right.
But his body and his sarcophagus were moved and it was transported under Jordan. I actually did a lot of remote viewing and I traveled to that tomb in my light body and I found his sarcophagus there. It has all these these hieroglyphics, these Egyptian inscriptions. And it's saying that the life of one is more than just one. It's the life of everybody that matters.
Right.
And it's an ebb and flow of energy in the cycle of life. That's what I was able to decipher from the Egyptian hieroglyphics when I was there in my light body and remote viewing it. And I had Zagor with me. He was observing what I was doing. And in my light body, I'm 10 feet tall in golden light body. He's 14 feet tall. So just imagine looking at this huge sarcophagus that has these Egyptian inscriptions, the hieroglyphics, and that mantra of sorts. It's a life teaching mantra. And just then sort of going energetically beyond the sarcophagus. And what I found with Zagor is that there's a stasis pod with Alexander the Great's body preserved inside of it. So we were studying his DNA because in the remote viewing, I learned that he was an exceptional soldier, warrior, strategist. He had a superhuman memory. And then I thought to myself, there has to be some genetic engineering here because he was more than human, obviously. This guy was only 5'6", and he did a lot of things that are impossible for humans to do.
I think a lot of the figures and the popular names that we're accustomed to from ancient times, past cultures, almost always they might be ET. You know, we don't really know, and they might have been in those positions of power because of their extraterrestrial, let's say, abilities, even though it's something even humans can do, but we're suppressed. I feel like back then those ancient cultures would look up to that and actually worship these people who seem to have these heightened abilities.
Well, he was actually human, but he was genetically engineered with Arcturian and Syrian DNA. The Arcturian DNA was what gave him that super memory, the strategist ability, the planning to see things 5 steps ahead of what reality was. And the Syrian DNA is what gave him that strength, that drive to succeed, that ability to win battles, even when it's impossible. So me and Zagor wrote his DNA. We literally went into his genetic makeup energetically inside DNA because DNA can be programmable and you can read it if you have ability. So we read his DNA. I studied the tomb. There's a lot of gold. There's a lot of chariots. There's a lot of statues. There's bullion. There's rubies. There's all kinds of treasure under Jordan, and it's different corridors, several rooms. But that's not what interested me. Alexander was the treasure because of his genetic makeup. And a few days later, I got notified by Ancestry.ca that my genetic makeup suddenly changed to that of Greek, Northern Macedonian, and Albanian, 2%. And I had done that genetic test like 2.5 years ago. And suddenly, after being in that tomb, in my light body and studying his genetics, my genetics suddenly changed into Greek. And I'm not Greek. I never had Greek DNA anywhere in my lineage. I'm Jewish and I'm Ukrainian and Russian. That's basically my ethnic DNA.
So how does that work? So they just decided on their own to reach out to you and tell you that something has changed within the genetic
Yeah,
makeup of your ancestry. But how,
yeah.
so are they constantly monitoring it to do that? That's
Well, I think what happened is that when I was in the tomb with Zagor, he is a geneticist, so he has the ability to transfer DNA and do kind of conduit transference. It was an accident. This was not planned. So when we were reading, because we were literally inside Alexander the Great's body, reading his genetics, energy, frequency, what's the genetic makeup? What's the percentages? Arcturian is 27% and Syrian is 30% for Alexander. The rest is human. That's his genetic makeup. So in the old times when humans thought that they worship gods, those were godlike beings, you could say demigods, but they
right.
were human with
Demigods.
augmented ET-DNA, not gods,
No.
but genetically engineered humans and hybrids. That's what
Right.
they were. That's what I learned what Alexander is. His body is perfectly preserved in stasis, though the soul is gone. The body's still alive without a soul. So if anybody lifts him out of that stasis pod, the body will die. So it's kind of like if they go into the tomb and somebody starts excavating it and studying it, don't touch the body. The body is preserved because of the genetics and what it is. It's purely for studying purposes. So it was surprising that my DNA suddenly changed. Ancestry, I see an email notification, your ethnic DNA has been updated. There's some kind of a change. So I log in and I go to see, okay, still 50% Jewish, still 42%, Russian, Ukrainian, all that stuff. And then I also had Baltics and Balkans. That didn't change either. But then I see at the bottom, 2% Greek, Northern Macedonia, and Albania. And I'm like, what is this? And so I went and had a telepathic chat with Zagor, and he's like, this was accidental transference of DNA. That's what it is. That's why it changed, because of what we were doing in the tomb.
Yeah, it's interesting they would show up in your chart. Very fascinating stuff. So I want to go into some of the so you've had experiences, you're a contactee, whatever, there's a lot there and you've written about it in your books, but some of the technologies that you've seen, worked with, that you might be able to explain and help shed light on. And I've written down some of them: smart suits, Neuralink chairs, holographic medical pods, memory engram stations, jump gateway stations for teleportation platforms, regen tanks, all that stuff. In particular, the smart suits. You've already mentioned that. Like, so what does that do? Does it actually like enhance your DNA? Does it feed you nutrients? Like, what happens with that?
So when you put on the smart suit, right, it does allow you to suppress the eating, desire to eat. So you don't have to eat like every 4 hours or 3 hours a meal. So it does monitor your metabolic rate, your metabolism. And it does, I guess what it does is regulates everything to be at its optimal capacity for all your bodily organs, especially for food. Another interesting thing that the smart suit does is it regulates your bodily functions in terms of you don't have to go to the bathroom while you wear this thing. The waste, the biological waste, somehow molecularly, since this stuff has nanotechnology, the smart suits, it allows you to not go to the bathroom, and it filters the biological waste product inside the body, so it is not toxifying your body. It filters it out, it cleans your body out. I'm not sure what the mechanics of that are because it's nanotech, but it allows that. And it also stops women's menstrual cycles, apparently, while you wear the smart suit. When you take it off, everything goes back to normal, is how your body normally functions. But when you have this thing on, it does change your molecular structure. It makes you more efficient. I guess it removes things that distract the body, that it's a distraction to go to the bathroom. It's a distraction to have a menstrual cycle. It's an annoying thing of a human body that everybody has to some degree, So it just makes you more comfortable. It makes you more efficient, and you don't have to sleep as much while you wear it because it augments your energy. It gives you more energy and strength to do stuff, so you don't have to sleep as much. That's what I noticed when I was wearing it. And I'm biologically female, so.
Right. That's interesting. I mean, does it give you like abilities to like jump higher, extra strength, stuff like
Yeah,
that?
it does. It does augment your ability. I never used it that way because I was mostly just on the basis in the cybernetics labs. I was doing genetic modification. I was doing the stuff with the holographic medical pods, monitoring how the holographic software works with the medical pod and programming different sequencing, organ regeneration, skin tissue, cellular regrowth. We had a lot of super soldiers with burnt stuff on their skin. If you're hit with a laser weapon, or if you're hit with a plasma cannon, that can penetrate the electromagnetic force field shield of the smart suit, and you end up with burns. So the medical pod would regrow their skin, squamous cell skin tissue layers. It would layer that all in for new skin growth and cell growth.
So is this smart suit, is it something that you physically put on, or is it like, I've heard there's like a wristband that sometimes you could put on, like in the movie Dune, where you hit it and all of a sudden your body's surrounded in this field? Is it something like that, or?
This was a physical smart suit. It's like nanotech skin. So it feels like you have a zipper, right? You put it on, zip it up, and the zipper disappears, and it feels like you're wearing kind of like a cat suit, if you will, or it's not coveralls, but an overall jumpsuit, but
Right.
it feels doesn't feel foreign. It's like what the ETs wear, the silver or blue type of a jumpsuit. It's the best thing. That's a smart suit. It's a light armor smart suit that creates an electromagnetic field. So it does protect you from being hit by bullets, by a electroshock type of weaponry. So that will deflect. Like if you're hit with a plasma cannon with a plasma beam, then it'll penetrate. It can break the magnetic field around the smart suit. The ones that I wore, it's a uniform. You put it on, you zip it up, and it closes up, and it conforms to your body shape. Doesn't matter what body type you have, it conforms to it with the nano synth tech that's inside it. So it conforms to the shape of the body, to the energy of your body, and it optimizes everything to its optimal capacity while you wear it. Then you take it off, and you're back to yourself the way you usually are.
Sorry if these seem like mundane questions, but your hands and feet, do they also go over your fingers and toes like a glove? Yes. Or do you wear separate gloves and shoes?
You can program the internal holographic components because it has it's nanotech. So it has internal holographic components. You can program gloves to come on, and you can program boots, or, for women, sometimes you don't want plain boots. So it has a bit of a heel. You could program it to reshape the boot.
Stylish too.
Yeah. Well, honestly, what I loved about these smart suits, you can program it to have a different color. You could program it to even look like clothing if you want some style and not the generic thing. And I just loved that smart suit uniform. I could change its colors, but I didn't have to wear all these girly clothes with skirts and other things. I like the monotone, just change the color, change the style of the heel, and you're good to go for work. Personally, clothing, human clothing just confabulates me sometimes. The weird things we humans wear.
Not just clothing. There's a number of things that don't make sense, really.
Yeah. Well, Planetary Corp was simplistic. Here's your smart suit uniforms. It protects you from being hit by these types of weapons, and it gives you an internal manual, what the smart suit does and how it works, what are its strengths and limitations. Like if you're going out to battle, you need a mech suit, you need a more bigger armored smart suit it's bulked up.
Right. So they have different purposes, different ones that serve different purposes. Obviously, you're not going to wear this battle suit if you're working on the ship or something,
Yeah.
That's fascinating. So then this is something we talk about a lot, but the regeneration med pods, the regen tanks, all that stuff, from my understanding that it works with your DNA. So because in our DNA is it's like a time machine. So it goes back to the time whenever you had all your limbs, let's just say, and it like it almost like takes some sort of a holographic photograph of that DNA, and it somehow brings it into the now, and then it regrows that limb. I don't understand the technology, but I think that's the basis of it. Am I close?
Yes, it goes back to your most healthiest optimal genetic blueprint when you were the healthiest. And from that, it takes that holographic sample and you program into the holographic medical pod the sequence of what you're fixing genetically or regrowing. And also takes mitochondrial cells, samples of mitochondrial cells and other tissues. So they could store not just DNA, they could store any organ type information sequence from the body. They could take samples from the body and keep it on file in their databases. They even take your most healthiest genetic sample and keep it in the database just in case. Because what if a person was born with flawed genetics? Then what? That holographic medical pod can even fix that flawed genetic deformity, mutation, whatever. Take a sample of that new healthy DNA, put it on the system file, and use it next time to fix something.
That was actually a question I've always had. I didn't have it written down, but thank you for answering that. I wonder that. I'm like, what if you're born with a defect or a missing chromosome? Like, how can that be addressed with a med pod or a med bed?
Yeah.
Sounds like it can be if I guess with the right technology.
Well, the ones that the holographic medical pods that are in planetary corp Mars bases, they run on plasma and they run on crystalline energy fields. So that's how the technology itself is powered. And then there's the holographic components attached to those pods. So you can go into see all the organs, see all the body parts, see where any disease is, see where the genetic deformity or flaws are, mutations, and then zero in on that issue and then program the software, holographic software, to work with the field frequencies of the plasma or the crystalline energy or both to go and fix that in that particular problem area in the body.
Right. That's very intriguing to me. Do you remember Dan Willis talking about being on a team of, I guess, scientists like here on Earth, working on a very primitive prototype of this medbed technology? And he was the one who was explaining that they actually like take some sort of holographic photo of your DNA. And then you obviously explained it way better than I did. But I mean, if he was on a team here on the surface working on that stuff, developing in the 80s, I think he said, it was crazy a long time ago. I mean, these corporations and these industries, militaries are using this stuff beneath our feet every single day. And even the elites, the politicians, certain people, it's not just on Mars and in the planetary corp. It's here. It's here. And that's what people are angry about that's not getting disclosed. But you can't be angry because there's a process. We have to, I don't want to say earn it, but we have to be ready for that type of technology.
Yeah, we definitely have to be ready for it. Dan Willis knows a lot about crystals because he worked with Marcel Vogel in the first crystal lab on the Vogel crystals. So that energy, you can study crystals because crystals, the piezoelectric fields and the lattice matrix of the crystal is alive and it holds energy. You could take that transfer energy, it's a power source, and you can make it into a crystalline source that powers the holographic medical pods. So works even quicker than it did on the plasma, or you can combine plasma together with that crystalline frequency and make the healing go faster to regenerate stuff on the body.
Right. Right. Very fascinating. And we've seen this disclosure in all sorts of movies. So were you going to say something?
No.
Oh, do you want to say something?
No, I was disagreeing with you.
All right, let's go. Let's just skip to the jump room teleportation technology. I know I'm jumping around here a little bit, but it's all fascinating. And I think it's kind of cool to cover it in detail. So we've heard about these jump rooms from a number of whistleblowers. Andrew Basiago talks about, Project Pegasus and the incredible stuff they were doing with that time travel program and the different methods. There were like 3 main different types of time travel, and one including the jump room, and each one has a different effect. It's different technologies. Okay. So what is your experience with that technology?
So basically, on these planetary corp Mars bases, I know of 11 bases. They each have like portable jump room platforms. It's like you stand on it and it time dilates you to a different frequency code. It could take you in the past. Mainly with me, it was just used to beam me in and out of Earth too on the Mars basis. Because honestly, a 16 vac is very tedious and boring. I knew Earth existed. I could return to Earth whenever I wanted. I would spend months on these bases, but what these gateway stations do is they time dilate the frequency to such perfect time dilation that nobody even knows you were gone. You could be on Mars for several months and then you return to the precise point you were taken from Earth. And there's no sequence of events missing because it's time dilation. And some of this tech runs on bismuth crystals.
I've heard
some
that.
of it runs on other type of portal sequencing technology. So on Mars, they use the bismuth crystals and they have like little columns beside these jumpway portal stations, and you can see the columns, and it's all grown. It is not grown naturally. It's they could sort of grow it in
grow the bismuth.
Yeah, grow the bismuth, like generate it in sequence coding, basically in a replicator technology.
It's interesting because that's the one crystal to me that doesn't look natural.
No,
It's not. It doesn't grow easily on Earth because it doesn't come from Earth. So even on Earth, it takes like months to grow it in a lab to perfection, where it has that proper frequency to it. They can use a replicator and grow it within like 3 days on Mars. I was just trying to remember the sequencing of how it's done and how long it takes. And then they have these little coils beside the jump room, station itself, because the station is portable. It can be moved. And then it uses an energy beam, beams you up, beams you off planet, on planet. It could do even time dilation where it locates the proper frequency to make sure that you're not sick with time dilation when you're beamed off from Earth to Mars and back and forth.
That's very fascinating to me. I think so. The bismuth, it looks kind of has that rainbow effect. I think that might be done from heat treatment. I don't know.
Yes, on Earth, yes. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Because it's not. Yeah, something about that never I was like, that's not natural.
No,
But
it's
I've
not.
heard from a few people that it's used in advanced technology.
It is.
I wonder what component it plays. Is it like the missing crystal? You set it in, and all of a sudden the machine starts working, or?
Well, it just basically converts any technology you have for streamlined optimal capacity to work in an optimal fashion. So basically, if they didn't have these little bismuth coils right beside the jump room station, the time dilation, you might get time dilation sickness, and somebody might know there was missing time. So it just perfects the technology to its optimal capacity.
Right.
Streamlines the process to take away any malfunctions or unexpected side effects to the human body, and also precise coordinates to time dilate you to the past, to the, planetary core prohibits time traveling to the future. It's mostly fixing issues with time dilation in the present, adjusting timelines, beaming people in and out, adjusting the timeline of the beam outs and the beam ins.
Yeah.
Again, the point is not to be noticed. The point is not to have missing time. And the point is to leave no trace evidence that you were ever gone and transported somewhere else.
Right.
That's what this technology allows to do now, on Mars at least.
And they've been successful until now. People are getting their memories back, and they never saw that coming. But at the same time, a lot of this was experimental tech, I'm sure, and they could have no way of knowing 20, 30, 40 years down the road the effects of it because they hadn't really done a trial, I guess. But what's most curious to me about even the secret space program in general, we started hearing about all this information, from the 2000s on. I'm reading Dolores Cannon's book, The Custodians, right now. And it's channeled stuff through her session, transcribed stuff through her sessions from the 80s. And this one session is talking all about the secret space program, but they're not calling it the secret space program. They're calling it a space program. And she went as far as, and the girl was asking about Mars being colonized. And there was like, yeah, people here, Earth humans are on Mars right now, but they're underground. And she said, like, what do you mean are Earth humans? Like people came there from Earth? She's like, yes, just put it this way. There's an accountant that you would know his name. He's working on Mars every day. And this is coming from a transcribed session in the 80s, talking about the exact same stuff that's starting to be disclosed now. I think that's really not smoking gun proof, but because it's just a transcribed session. But there's no way people are making this up. If it was coming through back then in the 80s, and they were talking about all the same stuff that we're talking about now, but just different lingo, different terminology. The term secret space program hadn't actually been formed yet because, it just wasn't common talk.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, the secret space program, they were building underground bases on the moon in the 1950s. Project Horizon, if you guys look at that,
right.
Wernher von Braun was building space stations, orbital round space stations with artificial gravity being perfected.
Right.
So when I channeled him, I was told his family was threatened. That's why he was brought into NASA to build these space stations. And they said, as long as you cooperate and build all this infrastructure, your family and kids will be safe. Your wife and your children will be safe. So he was under threat. That's why he actually did all these schematics that you see. He leaked it to Disney, and he leaked it to Popular Mechanics and Collier's magazine, the schematics. He made movies with Disney on these space stations because he sort of wanted to do this on his terms. So he leaked it, and they allowed him to leak that because eventually we already have these space stations. They're cloaked, but they'll have to sort of say, oh, we're now building these hotel space stations because NASA is no longer using rocket fuel and and SpaceX is outdated. The spaceship that he's building, that's old tech. That's old technology. They have plasma core hyperdrive engines now, FTL engines, and other beyond the speed of light crystalline technology on their ships. That's what Planetary Corp builds. So these things can go beyond the speed of light, and it does not take 8 years to get to a planet outside of our solar system anymore. But it started in the 1950s with Wernher von Braun and Mars. That's the US secret space program. It started on Mars. Then in the 1970s, 1980s, they started building bases on the surface of Mars with protective electromagnetic dome fields that protect the base that's built in the craters.
Right.
So their bases are no longer purely underground.
Yeah, I would imagine I've heard just from other testimonies that, they have surface structures, but it is in a dome, right? Even the movie Total Recall kind of shows that.
Yeah, it's in the dome because the electromagnetic field protects the dome. So basically the bases are cloaked. The dome cloaks the bases. It has holographic tech covering it. And the electromagnetic field also protects the base inside from being bombarded by weaponry, from telescopes picking up that there's a base, also from debris like meteorites, asteroids. It bounces off. If anything tries to hit the electromagnetic field, it just bounces it off and sends the debris pieces back into outer space. It's like kind of like a force field.
Deflector,
yeah.
It's interesting you mentioned Disney getting schematics for some of this stuff. I definitely think Disney's more than just like an entertainment business company, right? There's a corporation. I'm sure that somewhere along the line they might even have their own faction of some sort of space program. I think they're involved in a lot more than most people might understand. That's just my speculation. I have no way of proving that, but
I don't either, but Netflix is in on the game as well because they're making movies and series that are crazy with disclosure. The movie Jupiter Ascending, oh my goodness,
oh yeah,
100%. It has
everything. Like it has the reptilians, it has the grays, it has the genetic engineering, manipulation, genetic bloodlines of humans living on Earth that actually had reincarnated as humans, but there's something else in their genetic makeup. So that is the Prometheus, the movie Prometheus, the movie Passengers. I can go on and on. Halo.
I just watched Passengers, and Halo. There's incredible SSP disclosure in Halo. There's so much, man. There's so much in all that stuff. Jupiter Ascending too. They don't call it adrenochrome, but they're talking about adrenochrome. That whatever substance that is, that they're all it's highly sought after.
That makes you younger and rejuvenates you. That was in those capsules, that stuff. So you step into some kind of a liquid bath, silver bath, and you come out looking like your younger self or a totally different person.
Right. And William Tompkins talked about all this age regression stuff. They said they were working on it in pill form. And he said there was a series of pills that you could take that would slowly age regress you that people are taking now here on Earth. Like this stuff is crazy, you know?
Not crazy at all.
Not crazy. It's crazy that it's here and we're still, you know, crawling around in the mud.
Well, most people have no idea about any of this stuff.
Well, Planetary Corp, it didn't come in pill form. It came in biological drug serums with a needleless injector. That's what I was working on. But it was plasma based, and it was to inoculate you to not be sick on the planet when you first arrive. Because again, the gravitational field is different on Mars than what we have on Earth because it's a low oxygen planet. So you're going to be seasick when you get to Mars when you first came in. So these biological drug serum plasma inoculations had antigen stuff in it that would help you to have more oxygen in your bloodstream when you arrive on Mars and you're injected, and you don't notice anything different on being on Mars. So that's what they had me working on. It wasn't really age regression. It was just to make sure the body is working at optimal capacity. But the holographic medical pods, they can do age regression. Those biological serums can also be altered to age regress. I mean, you can dress it up in any form you want: pills, serums, medical pods. If you program it correctly, it can age regress.
And age progress. That's what Andrew Bishago talked about. They had him do as a 10-year-old. They progressed him to age 45. And he said it was interesting because the effects just wore off. And then eventually he was back to his 10-year-old self again. He didn't have to be sent back. It was very interesting the way he described that whole technology.
Yeah, it could be temporary or permanent. What the biological drug serums allowed me to do is extract etDNA and program it into the biological drug serum, inject myself, and temporarily have my molecular bodily structure changed and look like any ET I wanted. Height, eye color, hair color, strength, muscle mass could change it anytime I wanted. The only thing I didn't agree with that is I said keep the humanoid form with 2 arms and 2 legs. I don't want anything crazy with 2 heads and more limbs than I can handle that. Right. Because it's crazy enough when you look into yourself in the mirror, right? In the cybernetics lab, you look like a blue ET, you look like a Pleiadian, or you look like an Andromedan with long blonde hair, blue skin, and black stripes on your face. That's one of the ETs. And it was almost 8 feet tall and more slim than I, with more muscle mass, still female. That's what I looked like when I tried this drug serum with that genetic makeup.
Wow. I'm actually really loving this conversation right now, because these are things I think about, we talk about, I know they exist. But I think even having these conversations, it almost helps manifest it into a reality, a practical reality that we can actually move into, and this stuff becomes tangible and it's not just stories anymore. And I think this is exactly how we get there. Start having the conversations, first of all, to even plant those seeds to let people know, even a skeptic know, that even if they don't think it's real, it still gets the wheels spinning, you know?
When these memories came for me, I'm like, that's out of a sci-fi movie. How can this be real? And I was doubting it myself, all these memories. And then I got into hypnosis and being a shamanic practitioner, doing past life regression and different hypnosis protocols. This stuff is as real as you and I walking today on the planet.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I agree.
Anything that's impossible is actually possible off-world elsewhere.
Right.
Yeah.
And even some of the military, Navy, special forces, some of these, I guess, quote, alliance team members that we always talk about, I know that they're working with these types of technologies also to even pull off and accomplish their missions. You would have to, if this is really that multidimensional war, this battle, it's on all levels. It's a war on all fronts. But let's jump. We mentioned Halo, and in Halo they mentioned flash cloning, which is the first time I've heard of flash cloning was in that show. And even so, cloning was normal and it's normalized in the show, but flash cloning was illegal. So I was like, ooh, that must be something real, like a flash clone, whatever that means, an instant clone. I don't know. But what do you know about cloning, the technology? How are they doing it? Were you involved in any of that you know of or that you remember?
Yeah, cloning you can do in the regen tank. It's mostly done in that. First degree, second degree, third, fourth degree clones. You need to have the original genetics, pure genetic, without any mutation. So you need to have the original blueprint to clone the perfect body with proper genetic makeup for that soul memory to go into the clone, or to transfer a soul, your own soul from your own body into the clone. So genetics plays a huge factor. The genetic makeup must be perfect. It cannot be damaged, because if the clone body doesn't have that perfect, your own genetic makeup from your own blueprint, it'll malfunction, like some politician clones that we've seen. I'm not going to name names. They malfunction because it's not the perfect first gen or second gen clone. It's third, fourth. Right. I couldn't actually watch Halo completely. I watched the first 2 episodes because it triggered me. The female scientist with the blonde hair, what she was doing on the super soldiers, that's similar to what I did. So it almost sounded like my own story. So I couldn't watch it. So you would have to explain what flash cloning is to me.
Well, they don't fully explain it in the show. They kind of just throw that term out and they just talk about how it's highly illegal, but that woman that you're talking about does it anyway to herself. Oh. And then whatever the case is. But yeah, I mean, if you could make it through the rest of that, it's pretty wild, the stuff that they start disclosing through that series.
I still can't. It's too triggering because that's almost what I did. It's almost like a mirror image of what I was doing on the cybernetics labs. Right. And it was so like it literally, I couldn't get beyond episode 2. It was that triggering.
Yeah, I believe that because it's super. There's no doubt when I watch that, it resonates so deeply. I'm like, this is real. They're showing you straight up. This is what's going on. All the way down to the emotion suppressing implants that they're putting in their spines and all that shit.
Well, the Neuralink implants that I had, which is made out of Nordic tech and nanotech and etheric tech as well, energy field, it suppressed my emotions. I could turn off my emotions and be as robotic as I wanted or somewhat emotional, but I would usually turn off most emotion to do my work, to focus on the work I was doing in the cybernetics labs. I didn't care for emotional connection of any type, really, when I had those implants. So
that's super interesting. And I've heard you mention a Neuralink chair before. Yes. What is that?
So that's ancient Atlantean technology. It can look crystalline. It can look like a rock. I was sent to Antarctica to study it. And because they have Atlantean outposts, that's where I first heard of it. And so they were trying to replicate it and bring it back to Mars. Because when you sit in a Neuralink chair, it allows you to see holographic history of other planets. It allows you to astrally time travel to different locations in past history, future, present. It allows you to open up portal sequencing and actually jump gate yourself from point A to point B on a planet or off planet, if you can get the sequencing correctly. If you already had these Neuralink implants like I did, augmenting my ability, I could sit in that ancient Atlantean Neuralink chair and do that stuff.
Yeah. So it's kind of like, it almost reminds me of the looking glass chair technology that we hear about.
Yeah, but I think it's a little even more advanced than that.
Right. I feel like even Looking Glass, it's such a common term now. I feel like it was a very rudimentary version of that technology. It's probably been perfected by now.
Yeah.
Who knows what they're capable of at this point. What was I going to say? It was something surrounding the clones. We were talking Neuralink chairs. I don't remember. So you have I wrote down ancient arc spaceships. You mentioned that in one of your books, and we hear about these arcs being activated. Some of the it's hard to verify, is any of this stuff true? Is it not? Is it just like a psyop narrative? Are these arcs real? What's your experience with that?
Well, I remote viewed one, not in Ukraine itself, but in the sea. It's as real as you and me. It is underwater. There's electromagnetic field protecting it, so nobody can get inside it. It has technology that allows you, again, a lot of it is crystalline. Even the navigational comms, crystalline nacelles inside powering it. And it allows you to interface with holographic systems. It allows you to leave the planet if you want. It has terrariums with biodome stuff like parks and food processing. So these arc ships are very old. They're like Andromeda and Pleiadian. I have memories of past lives living on arc ships, Andromeda and Pleiadian ones, traveling through space. They're finding planets that can be colonized and seeded with humanoid life and plants and animals. And then they send the genetic makeup to that, and they send colonists to colonize it and spread these genetic libraries. And then they leave and let the beings evolve. So that's what my past life memories are with them. And I fully understand there is an arc ship on Neptune because that's heating up. So the weather is heating up, the atmosphere is changing. So that happens when these arc ships activate. There's different signature polarity of heat that it creates that is picked up by our tech now. So that's happening on Neptune.
I mean, yeah. And obviously you said the one you remote view was under the sea in Ukraine.
Yes. Yeah, near Ukraine.
Right, near Ukraine. So these things there's probably more than just one. I'm sure.
Yeah, there's several of them. I even remember some of them being built in Antarctica.
I believe
by the Atlanteans. They had shipbuilding facilities. That's in my book. Built huge ships that I consider in the class of arc ships. So This is not a new term to me.
Right. It's not new to me either. It's more popular now. You hear a lot of people talking about the arcs where it just kind of came out of nowhere. The movie 2012 even depicts space arcs, if you've seen that movie.
No, never seen that one.
A JP insider that talks to Michael Sala, right?
Yeah. He's the one who talks about it a lot. Yeah. So we were talking about clones. I remember what I wanted to say earlier. There's the idea of these like basically biological robots, these cyborgs that look human, but they act human. They even have the consciousness of a human, but they're a robot. And that's been like some of the rumors or even some politicians and stuff. Even Elon Musk, we've seen videos of them malfunctioning, but it doesn't always look like a clone malfunction. Sometimes it looks like a robotic malfunction. Is that, and then there's also been movies that depict that. There's an old episode of Stargate that depicts exactly that. They're able to make a copy. It's not like splitting the consciousness. They're actually able to make a copy of that person and put him into a robotic, organic version of themselves.
Yeah, they make a copy of the memories of the person. They don't transfer the whole soul of the person, but it's the memories of what made up the person. Right. And it's like a little small implant that sort of looks like a circular little device where the memories are and goes under the skin, and it activates energetically inside the person, and the memories go to the brain, and it makes the person active. That actually is shown in the TV series Emergence, where they did this to a little girl. So, and she's a synthetic biological cyborg. with human memories, and she acts human. She is human, but she has advanced abilities, and she has cybernetics components inside her body.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating all the different versions of a bipedal humanoid they can make that would trick anybody unless you knew what you were looking for. And sometimes you might not even be able to tell.
Yeah, sometimes you can't. Planetary Corp makes the biological human cyborgs with cybernetic implants and nanotech components, but it can also transfer another person's soul into that particular body and transfer that person's soul into an organic body. Either way, they've taken that to the 9th degree in what they do.
Oh, I believe it. I mean, I believe it. At this point, I just think if you can imagine it, it's possible. Like,
Yeah.
or they're already doing it. I think the possibilities are endless. And I've said this before, like Popular Mechanics, you mentioned earlier, we get these magazines that show all these future tech, this amazing stuff, but then you never see it surface in the public. It's like they're telling you it's there, but it never amounts to anything. It just gets brushed under the rug. Like, hey, this is their way of disclosing it without actually having to use it.
Well, it's culpable deniability. If there was an accident in programs and suddenly everything was revealed through some kind of a accidental issue that happens, plausible deniability is, hey, that already existed, and we talked about it in these Popular Mechanics magazines, Collier's magazine. It was just top secret, and now it can all be revealed. They'll say it was just top secret, and that's how it had to be. That's their excuse.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. They can go back to 2002 issue of Popular Mechanics and be like, oh, this stuff's been around. It's nothing new.
Mm-hmm. Can go back to the 1950s Collier's magazine, where Werner von Braun detailed everything, the bases, the space stations. I'm a researcher. I had to dig around to get to the 1950s stuff. Now it's been deleted. But they had it archived, and I grabbed it all. And I'm like, yeah, why not? I want the proof of the US, space program, how it all started. And it goes back to those German scientists, Paperclip, and even earlier. It goes back to Roswell, 1947 and earlier.
I think it probably, the modern space program, you probably start seeing aspects of it show up in the late 1800s, even, I would imagine.
Yeah, definitely. I didn't go back as well. Yeah, the blips, those blip craft, those are something that they actually have now in perfected tech, where they could easily use helium as the fuel source. And now those blips are hovercraft delivering stuff to Antarctica and military. Even the Canadian RAF Air Force is thinking of using hovercraft from the old blip technology, now advanced to just nice hovercraft.
And you're saying blip, you mean blimp? Like
blimp, or blip.
Okay. Yeah, exactly. And I think that goes back into like Tartaria and all that stuff, where this entire planet was like some major advanced technological society, almost like Atlantis. But and it's all been literally buried, like building cities on top of it, and we get more and more of that stuff surfacing now too, which that's an entire different episode. But it's fascinating to look back and see like some of these old cathedrals and these buildings. They have these like articulate designs that aren't just random artistic creations. These are actual technologies that were functioning with the ley lines in the ether, right? Yeah. And it was providing a free energy technology, a free energy to the people. And obviously, the cabal had other plans in mind for us, and they wiped it out.
Well, I mean, they studied the tech, they reverse engineered it, and it's being used now off-world to... Planetary Corp does things with a serious progression of how will it benefit me technologically. It's all about the technology and the advancements in regeneration medicine. It's not about money. It's not a money system. It's a technology system and what it gives them, the advantages, the higher up advantage point. That's how they function. They're a military corporation.
Right. It's not about money to them, but
No.
they make it about money for us, so we can't.
Well, it's about power and control for them.
Yeah, it always has been. It's pretty simple. And for me working there, everything was provided. Clothing, food. I had basically I could program anything I want food-wise, and the replicator would make it for me in my own quarters. And if I wanted something more advanced, I would have to go to the cafeteria and have the cooks make it if it wasn't already prepped for that day.
So there's a piece of technology, replicator.
Yes.
So that's something that comes up everywhere. And we even see versions of that in certain devices that are even available now. They're not creating meals, but like we're starting to see, this decades old technology finally surface.
Yeah, like building bone structure. You can 3D print bones, certain bones, certain tissue. Even they're trying to 3D print a heart. That's replicator technology. 3D printers are the low base replicator, what we have now.
Right. And are you familiar with GANS technology, gas in the nanoatomic state, like plasma water and stuff like that?
Yeah, I'm familiar with it. And sometimes it works great if you know what you're creating with it. And sometimes it doesn't, depending on what experience you have making it.
Right. I feel like that's a very rudimentary form of a replicator technology also, because it replicates the nutrients and makes them last forever if it's utilized properly. And you can essentially set an orange or whatever on this device and it'll pull the nutrients from that orange into a glass of water. And you drink the water, you're getting everything that orange would have given you.
Yeah. It's a process of osmosis. Like if you want to make a crystal elixir, say if you want rose quartz, amethyst, it's good for giving you extra boost of energy, and shungite and tourmaline. You put those crystals in pure water, filtered water. You don't want to use the tap water because that's disgusting, full of chlorine. You put those crystals in, and you want to have stones that are smooth, like palm stones, little ones. You leave that in the water for a while, and the water absorbs their properties of boosting energy and whatever metaphysical healing properties those crystals have. Then you take out the crystals, and in 2 days you drink the water. By osmosis, you're getting the benefits and properties of those healing crystals. So it sounds like the GANS tech is doing something similar.
Yeah, it's a little more complicated than that, but definitely something similar. I have crystals in a glass jar of water upstairs. I call it Reiki water because I didn't have a better word for it. But yeah, I mean, people do that. I know people put crystals in their water to get that. Crystal technology is absolutely fascinating as well, as far as like even the crystals themselves having a consciousness and being able to store data, and being a rock can be a time machine because it stores it has memory of everything that happened in that area for eternity. Yeah.
And in the Atlantean outpost in Antarctica, I saw crystalline discs that store holographic information about Mars history, all the wars, all the stuff that happened on Mars. The beings living under Mars, the original native colonists that look like Native Americans somewhat, they went to live underground when the catastrophe happened, where the nuclear type devices that were used to razz our solar system, the occupants went underground. So that's why you still hear, the Dolores Cannon past life stuff living underground on Mars. They still do it. Some of them still do it.
She specifically talked about in that book them being like Native Americans, like what we would recognize as a Native American.
And I met some of them. My Neuralink implants were supposed to be used as a spying device to locate where they are and to relocate them, so Planetary Corp could build more underground labs where these people are. I temporarily shut off the Neuralink implants when I went to meet them, and then as a result, I had like seizures and stuff because the neural net that's, connecting everything to the axons and the neurons, it is connected to the implants. When you deactivate that temporarily, things start to happen neurologically to the body. But I didn't want Planetary Corp knowing where their location is underground, so I took a risk. I was supposed to spy to find out where their little colonies are underground.
Right. Same here on Earth. There's under inner Earth civilizations that are existing the same exact way, much more advanced than the surface population for a number of reasons. Because for one, they're not being poisoned consistently every day. So you've mentioned Atlantean outpost, Atlantis a couple times. And that's something that I hear coming back up all of a sudden now, too. We're hearing a lot more talk about Atlantis. And maybe that's because what we're going through right now resembles what the fall of Atlantis looked like. Except this time around, we have this spiritual awakening going on, and we're at a different place than that civilization was.
Yeah.
So I was wondering if you could share anything about the Atlantis energies that are surfacing now, and if they relate to any of your past life stuff.
Yeah, I had 2 past lives in Atlantis, one as a mermaid and one as a geneticist / crystal healer. For me, the most traumatic one with this was the geneticist, because you had the Law 1 organizations and you had the Sons of Belial who were doing the genetic chimera experiments. And because of those chimera experiments, kids were being born with tails. Kids were being born with animal primal instincts and even being more violent as adults. And that created a genetic virus mutation that attacked the Atlanteans. And then they created a, inoculation, and sort of like they created a vaccine, and more kids started to be born with tails and animal-like DNA. So if we look at what happened a couple of years ago in what was released into the world from, that place, the sea place, it sounds similar, because they were basically playing around with viruses and animal DNA and other stuff, putting that virus in animals and then transmuting it to humans, like a carrier device.
Right, like they were doing with the mosquitoes.
Yes.
The Zika virus and all that stuff.
And now we have this lovely V card virus, the C and the V, floating around, and it's various mutations, and it's spreading like wildfire because it's not natural. And that's what they did in Atlantis. That's what I remember, because I was dating one of the guys, the Belial guys, and he was genetically mutated and killed because he actually wanted to come forward and say that they had these genetic labs underground, secret labs, and exposed it all. And I'm like,
so there were whistleblowers in Atlantean times.
Yes, they were. Yeah, there were. And I still to this day regret that I didn't say anything or try to stop it, but then they would have offed me as well. Right. So,
well, now's your second chance. Now everybody's second chance to redo that without collapsing this time.
Yeah.
And, let's face it, the negative part, the negative system, that needs to collapse, that needs to go. But the entire civilization doesn't have to be destroyed.
No.
We can make a transition, and it starts with these conversations.
Yeah, and it starts with getting yourself just educated about all these things that they're concocting and cooking up and trying to put in our body. Like, read up on it. There's a lot of info coming out of what it was and what it is. So it's public knowledge at this point, 4 years later, what's happening. And it's huge. It's almost similar to what they did in Atlantis, except they played around with animal genetics and making human ET
right. And I've heard that, and we see, if you want to call it evidence, we see evidence of that in Egypt. In the hieroglyphs and the statues, the structures, everywhere.
Exactly, because when Atlantis collapsed, the Atlanteans they went to Egypt and started all over again, and played with human genetics and advanced it even more. And then we have the ET stuff, and the ET genetic engineering, the godlets, the gods, the demigods, humans claiming that they procreated from gods. That's ETs. That's not gods.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting. Have you heard of the book, The Ancient Secret of the Flower of Life?
Yes, I have.
So have you read it or not?
Yeah, I read it, and then it connects to the Halls of Amenti and the Flower of Life throne, the holographic medical pods underneath that thing that renew people's life force every 50 years. Right.
Well, so they talk about Lemuria to Atlantis to Egypt in that book, and in particular, they talk about when the Atlanteans went to Egypt, they were trying to bring this new belief system of like the oneness, like the law of one type of, and so they were very much a demigod based society. So they believed in all these different gods, the sun god, the water, all, and they had a different god for each one. So they came and tried to promote this new belief system, this new ideal, and it didn't go over well. And that's why the people revolted back then. It would almost be similar to like if they were to try and truly disclose something like that now, like some people just wouldn't, it would threaten their belief system so much they wouldn't know what to do besides
religions.
Right.
Yeah, because they think they all have the truth. It's
ego.
Well, there's the creator myths. The Vedas, the Vedics have their creator myths. The Native Americans have their creator myths. It's ETs that came down to Earth and taught them something, and that's the creator myths of how that happened in a basic form of how they could describe it at the time. Now we can describe it as this is this technology. They came in spaceships. They did this. They did that, because we have a higher concept understanding of technology. Because we have technology. So if they bring something, we can technologically explain, even though their tech might be more advanced than ours, we have the terminology and the foundation to explain what the ancient ones, the ancient civilizations here on Earth didn't at those times, because they didn't have that similar tech.
Exactly. We have a reference point to explain all this stuff. It just goes back to the, ancient alien theory, I guess. They, like some of the natives, if they've seen some of this stuff, they don't have any words, vocabulary for it. So it's a god. It's
magic.
It's magic. Yeah.
Divine.
The Firebird came down from the sky in a plume of smoke and landed and taught us agriculture.
Right.
Exactly.
Right. Or Jonah spending however long in the whale's belly.
Or Noah's Ark. Similar
Right.
stuff.
Right.
Was Noah's Ark an actual boat, or was it a craft?
From what I looked at it, remote viewing, it was silver cylindrical craft. It wasn't. If it was a boat made out of
doesn't make any sense.
Wood, it wouldn't have survived the flooding. It just wouldn't, and it couldn't go under, because that space ark, it could go underwater or it can go above and just hover in the sky. Could go above the Earth too. They had 4 of these arcs, actually, because there was a lot of people and animals and DNA.
Right.
So one arc doesn't make sense just for Noah's people.
Ezekiel's wheel in the Old Testament is a craft. It's clearly like a craft. It's described, there's all kinds of things. It's like if you have the eyes to see, you're reading these ancient texts and it's like right there. You're like, oh yeah.
Right.
It's obvious.
Exactly.
But if you're reading it with a belief system of what you're told, how you're told to interpret things, then that's
or the one thing they like to say is like these are all metaphors. Like or it's actually exactly what they're describing.
Yeah, exactly.
Or the flying chariots, the Vimanas, and the blue skinned beings flying them.
Right.
Those were ETs.
Yes.
Right.
So
in craft.
It's like the more advanced you have, the easier it is to describe something technologically. If you have something similar, even if it's primitive tech, if it's something similar, it can be described in an advanced state of what it is. I mean, I'm a researcher, I'm a library technician, I'm not a military insider, but I could still describe in detail what I experienced and what I saw, because the terminology comes from those repressed memories. It's not terminology I made up today in the now. That's terminology that they had on Mars and still have. And that's what I'm using to its exact form, trying my best.
Yeah. And it's interesting too. This Custodian's book I'm reading, the Dolores Cannon, the word that keeps coming through the session from these beings is solar, not cellular. But they're saying a lot of these stuff happens on a cellular level, SOUL, cellular. And she's like, are you pronouncing that wrong? She's like, no, it's a word you guys haven't adapted yet. But it's really interesting, some of these terms that we don't use anymore also. And one of the things in that, so let me reword this. So I wonder how long some of these underground, undersea bases have actually been on the planet. Because in that book, she describes a mountain base that even the governments don't know about that has been here since what we would refer to as the beginning, when this planet was built or terraformed, is the way she describes it. Before humans even existed, ETs already had a base here, right? So I wonder how many of these ancient bases have been here the whole time.
Well, according to my past life memories, Atlantis was started 2 million years ago. When the ETs came, all of the ones that made the pact to do the Atlantean project, that was 2 million years ago. So, and our planet is what, 4.3 billion years?
Right.
According to the geological record.
Right.
So the sky there's no limit to the sky, to the potential, how long these bases could have been around. Because you have, if you go to cosmic galactic history, there's so many people talking about the history, how this planet was formed, what ETs were here. I wrote a whole book about it, and I'm like, wow, so many Syrians, Lyrans, Pleiadians, Anunnaki, all of them played a role, reptilians, all Meldakians, all of them were here at some point doing their own stuff.
Yeah.
So it's huge. The history alone, it would convolute you to start trying to piece together the history of how it happened. That's what I tried to do. And it was like spending 4 months just putting it all in chronological order. And I still have other history popping up in other books now.
Right.
So spent ages on it.
Another nugget I got from that book was that, so she's talking about this base that's been under this mountain that they won't disclose. Apparently our governments don't even know about. It said that it exists almost in a different dimension, like time. She explained like 8 hours there would be 1 minute in our time, but you get there physically, you just pass through what she would call time juncture. And she's like, what's so important about this location? Why is this there? Why was it there when this planet was created? And she said that it is the reason your planet is so sought after is because that specific location under that mountain is the exact center of the universe. That's what she said. And she said, how does that work if the planet's always moving? She's like, it's a dimensional thing that we can't actually verbalize and explain to you, but that would be the exact center point of our entire universe. And what happens on Earth affects everything because of that. That's why they've been here for so many years, mitigating these earthquakes, volcanoes, all these natural disasters. They've been less pole shifts. They've been lessening the effect of them so the planet doesn't get destroyed, because it's absolutely crucial that this planet thrives and exists and makes it through this transition because of that specific location. Just, if that's true, I don't know, but
it sounds, when energetically, just from a psychic perspective, it does read true to me. And it sounds like it's in a time warp bubble. So it's in a time dilation displacement field.
Exactly. That's what
that's what I'm getting. There's a energy tech that's doing this and it's keeping it hidden. I mean, I had an experience in Peru when I was astral traveling under the Amaramuru Stargate portal. And Amaramuru has been renamed something else now, but it's Amaramuru. And they have the Maldakian tunnel systems underground with the golden sun disk of Mu that can also change the orbit of the planet, stabilize it. And it's made out of gold, pure gold. That tech is underground. And there's also the Vecej Mountains in Romania,
right,
and the Radu Cinnabar books. That stuff is amazing. Right. They have bases. They have stuff under Iraq, portal systems under Iraq. When I remote viewed that, there's so much ancient stuff that's yet to be discovered. So it's not surprising what Dolores Cannon was talking about. It's huge energetic base.
Right. She described it as a time juncture. And she said that there's actually multiple time junctures on our planet. It's like this dimensional crossover. It's really hard to explain. And she said a lot of the people who had missing time, who thought they were taken while they were driving or walking, sometimes they just accidentally walk through this time juncture and then they come back and have this missing time. They weren't actually taken. It was just like a literal accidental.
So a lot of times it is because they were taken.
Yeah, also, exactly. But sometimes that's probably another explanation.
Yeah, it's another explanation.
Like falling into a time loop in the energy dilation matrix sequence of this place. that's just what I'm psychically getting. It's how it happens.
Right.
And people disappear in the Bermuda Triangle all the time because there's a crystal vortex energy left over from Atlantis that's malfunctions sometimes, and it creates a time loop distortion, and it zaps people in with electromagnetic frequency field from the crystalline tower that's deep under the ocean. And it creates a vortex, and somebody goes in and can be in the 1940s.
Different time.
Yeah, they get sucked into a different timeline stream, and they might be stuck there forever, or they might not if the vortex reprograms itself and takes their genetic makeup back where it currently is. That has happened too. So people ended up coming back saying, I was in the 1940s. And,
well, the movie, The Final Countdown, that Navy movie, if you've seen that, I think it's called The Final Countdown.
No.
John Warner talks about it on our episode, but it was like a Navy recruitment movie back then. But in that movie, they stumble across, that happens. They slip through this time portal in the middle of the ocean, and they're in 1940s, right before the Pearl Harbor attack. And they realize that they're in a different time. And they ended up trying to take advantage of it and stop the attack, whatever. But they kind of depicted that was how they stumbled across time travel and all that stuff. But it seems to me like if there's any accuracy to that, they would have stumbled across it, and that's how they learned about it.
Yeah, well, time looping, something that major has already happened. You try to alter it; it will still happen almost in the same way because it's a time loop. It's like the elastic, you try to break the elastic, it rebounds. That has already happened. That event has happened. So altering it can have consequential effects on present time, or even the event itself. If it doesn't happen, something else here will happen to make up for it, to rebound that elastic into place. So it's like, don't mess with what happened already. You can make something worse happen in the present.
And it's funny how everything goes back to movies. And I never even used to watch a lot of movies, but until I recently been going and watching all these disclosure related movies, but they tell a story, and there really there's a lot of truth to it. But that's how it's always depicted. You don't mess with the past ever. And there's strict laws in place with time travel where you don't do certain things because you can alter the outcome of the future.
Well, certain ETs can change the timeline so a planet is not destroyed, to prevent major catastrophic events that are destruction based, that are on the extinction level. They do alter that so planets and people don't get destroyed. Sometimes there's a caveat where you can change something if it's a extinction catastrophic event caused by man-made issues. Sometimes they could changing around so the planet doesn't get destroyed. So there are certain caveats with that kind of a time manipulation where it can be done to save a planet and beings. But if it's like something that a war has already happened and the beings recovered from that, you don't go removing that war because it can cause something else to happen.
Right.
That makes sense.
Were you going to say something?
I was thinking about, I was listening to Sean David Morton on Michael Sala interviewing him a few weeks ago. And he was talking about, I want to say like some other insider that was talking about information of on a different timeline, our planet turned into a massive, more enslaved than we already are, like a massive just slave planet where like we had zero freedom whatsoever. And it was just like, completely, we had zero free will, zero freedom. Like it was just completely enslaved. And like the technology that's mostly hidden now was like openly just like used because we couldn't do anything about it. And we were just like completely locked down. So what like the ETs, or I can't remember if it was the ETs or if we were allowed to change. He said one thing in the past that, and I forget what it was, but whatever they changed our timeline to where now it's not that bad anymore.
Right.
So it was like this one thing they did, somehow they knew to change that one specific thing that would alter the timeline to not quite.
Right.
It's almost like it got so bad that they they had to step in, like you said, like if the planet were to be destroyed or something major that would be too bad, whatever, if the planet is special, like you just, Dolores Cannon,
and that's what she even asked that question. She's like, can they,
maybe that's why. Yeah.
She's like, why are they allowed to interfere? She's like, it's not actually interference. It's part of this. You can call it an agreement or not a contract, but an agreement. So no, even though they're not allowed to interfere with humans, sometimes if the fate of the planet depends on it, it's not interfering. They're keeping up their end of the agreement to keep the planet safe.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I remember from past life memory being a star guardian and sometimes altering time and preventing things and still doing this on this planet, certain missions, say source creator or my guides give me. If I choose to take it, I can prevent certain things from happening. It's not something I feel too comfortable talking about what I've done, but I've had that happen, and World War III was prevented. And we sort of know why Mr. T became president. So the other one, the Scorpion Queen, couldn't start World War III.
Scorpion Queen.
And you guys know who I'm talking about.
Oh, yeah.
Suit.
Right.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, so I'm talking code, but everybody knows the code lingo. So he became president to avoid that. They put him in. I was allowed to alter time to make sure he gets in, and she doesn't. She doesn't climb the scorpion ladder and falls off the ladder.
Right, so, that's interesting.
Makes a lot of sense.
There was definitely some altering of some timeline for all that to play out the way it did.
And it did seem like they were so sure she was going to win. It's almost like
they were 100% certain.
It's almost like they viewed the future of that timeline, but then it was allowed to be changed.
Yeah, I knew 3 months before the election what would happen because they showed me World War III and the Scorpion Queen causing it and how. It was massive. It was World War III everywhere on the planet, like everywhere.
I believe it.
Not just one particular place. It was everybody involved.
Well, they had their...
That's what they wanted. That's what they've been trying to create for a long time.
Well, Agenda 2021, was it?
Agenda 21.
That's if she got in 2016, that would have
happened.
Yeah, by 21. But for obviously there was a major delay. So thank God for that. And right now, who the hell knows what's going on? But
I know some of it. I was like, why is this old clone that's malfunctioning going to be president? I asked Source Creator, and he's like, to expose the darkness, to expose everything that is dark, super dark. And I'm like, can I replace him with Mr. T again? No, you can't. You can't fiddle around with time. Time has to go as it should with this particular agenda to expose the darkness and the evil.
And that's what I've been saying. I'm like, people have to understand what we've been in. It has to be exposed. And it's waking people up. It's allowing us to see for ourselves.
Even the deepest sleeper is going to start to question, like, hey, something's not right.
People need to start questioning their reality, and it's forcing that with so many people.
And what we're seeing is a failing clone. That's what's
I mean,
going on.
It's
so what it seems like.
It's so obvious, and it's some of it almost seems intentional, like reading every word on the teleprompter. I mean, repeat the line, end of quote.
End of quote. Yeah.
I mean, it's a comedy.
Yeah, and it really is a comedy. It's to show us, why did 50% of people actually vote for that? People voted for that.
Maybe it was
the election fraud was so obvious too. It's almost like that was to expose that, and say, hey guys, it's rigged,
Yeah, the way that Source Creator showed it to me, it was like 50% of people honestly voted for him and 50% was voter fraud.
Right. I believe that there was definitely people that voted for him, no doubt.
But not 81 million.
No. 50% of people voted for him.
Right.
50% of the US contingent voted for him.
I can believe that.
Yeah, that's what Source Creator, everything is shown to me in percentages. I'm like, 50%, that's huge. And
that's even hard to believe. Yeah.
Well, that's what I was shown.
But the fraud made it seem like a landslide when it in fact was not. Yeah. And then the media tries to say, oh, it's conspiracy theory.
Right.
There's no evidence when it's like mountains of evidence.
Well, yeah, mountains of evidence, but sweep it under a rug, hide it, and don't take it out to see the light of day. But the UAPs, man, what's happening now with those UAPs in Congress? It's UFOs are acceptable, and they're saying those craft are not human made. We don't know nothing about it.
Right. It's kind of surprising we're getting that
I'm
narrative.
Surprised
but they also, like, again, there's plausible deniability in all of it. And I've been saying this. So they're disclosing some of it, but it's all redacted. It's all very, there's a gray area, but it's also because they all have blood on their hands. People have literally been killed and murdered trying to expose this stuff by these corporations, by these governments, even military aspects of the military. So if they were to come out and say, hey, yeah, we've been doing this, we knew about this the whole time, they're admitting that they've been lying to us the whole time, and they're not going to do that. So they're trying to find a way to disclose everything without telling on themselves.
Yeah, I mean, Lockheed Martin has been involved in reverse engineering crafts that they crashed. The ET Greys crashed on purpose. And they reverse engineer that, and that's the flying triangles, the TR3, the TR6, the TR10, and it goes on and on. And I mean, look, these Tic Tacs, these gimbals, obviously, it's a craft, and it's piloted by somebody remotely with thought consciousness. Maybe it's too small for anybody to be physically inside it, but it is consciously
intelligently designed.
Intelligently designed, and there's a pilot remotely piloting that thing, and it's reconnaissance data gathering.
It's an advanced drone, essentially.
Planetary Corp had me do that with Neuralink implants powering huge ships to see how well the new prototype is flying out in space remotely without any crew on, just accessing the nav consoles holographically through the Neuralink implants. That's one of the things they had me doing in the space lab, as I call it. But that's possible. So,
I mean, even though we're getting this controlled narrative of a disclosure, it's still a step forward, just because the concept is now accepted and not laughed at. Even though it's still coming through the lamestream media,
but the cabal still wants to try to steer it to like fulfill their agendas.
A threat narrative.
So, they want to create like a fake alien invasion and problem reaction solution, what they've always done, create this big, and then we'll come in with the solution is one world government that we control. The whole World Economic Forum, all of the Build Back Better, like, humans are now hackable animals that we can control, and that myth of a soul, that's done. Free will, that's over. That's what stuff they're like openly saying now. And I'm wondering, like, do they really think they're going to be able to get away with this, or are they just like playing out a role now? Or
I think, like you said, it's all being allowed to happen.
I think it's being allowed
to show everybody the extremes they're going to go to, and it's almost like, oh my God, like people are just standing up and they're done with it,
Yeah, because again, it's like, why repeat the past when we already know what the past was and the outcome? Why not change the present? And I think people are born with that cellular memory imprint to avoid the mistakes of the past, so we don't do it again in the now or in the future. We're born with the memories. So why not just access them, work with them, and try to change the present for a better world?
Exactly. And I think that's happening all across the board right now. Like, all this ancestral trauma, all this generational trauma, all this stuff is finally coming to an end right now. That's why so many people are having memories come back. The stuff's being exposed. These younger generations are here to put a stop to these looping cycles that have been going on for generations. And that's all ending right now. And people don't know how to respond to it. Even the planet, it's a lot of first happening right now. And we're all here along for the ride. And sometimes it sucks. Sometimes it's beautiful, but we're here for it. And we came here for that. And we can't forget that.
Exactly. We came for an experience, and we're getting our experience to learn, to grow, and adapt. Humans are amazing at adaptability. So anything that's hidden eventually becomes unhidden. It's in the Dolores Cannon books, it's in my books, other people's books. All of it is part of the cycle of life. I think the SSP stuff, the ET stuff, the abductions, the contacts, the UAPs, it's all interconnected.
100%.
If you try to link one with the other, there's a link. I mean, this is probably a psyop. Gary Nolan from Stanford University's saying the CIA came to him and gave him reports to study how UFOs have radiologically damaged pilots' brains and left white matter lesion scars in their brains. So that's going around everywhere right now. He's the it guy.
Right.
So for that, and I am like, oh, that's familiar. I had white matter lesions when I removed my Neuralink implants. No problem.
So, and it also, of course, they slapped a CIA label on that narrative, and what does that do? It highlights the CIA. I mean, I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but yeah, we'll see how that plays out.
Well, he's been talking about it everywhere, how exciting this is, because he created some technology that looks for blood abnormalities or something in a person. So he was given 101 reports and to interview these Navy pilots, military, aerospace contractors who encountered UFOs. And then they had white matter lesions show up in their brains and some cognitive dissonance and just burns. Some of them had burns, and they're like, a UFO can cause this? Yes, if a laser beam weapon from a UFO is directed at your brain, it could cook you.
Right.
My Neuralink implants were failing in 2017. The nanofiber gold was leaking in my brain, causing inflammation in the left side of my brain where these 4 implants were. I went in and I had an MRI scan done. It was showing white matter lesions. I took the implants out, used plasma, like human plasma, to heal the neurological damage. White matter lesions scarred over, disappeared. Went in for my next MRI, no lesions, because there's no more implants in my brain and no more nanotech fiber gold leaking in my brain, causing inflammation. Problem solved. It's like, so if these Navy personnel, whoever, they were exposed to something from the UFO that was causing radiological matter coming in, or a laser beam, and they were, cooked with it, no, of course they'd have physical damage. And he's trying to plunk that in and explain it, how that can happen. Yes, certain UFOs can cause it. What is the intent of the beings on it?
Right.
So my Neuralink implants malfunctioned. Nothing more to it. And since I didn't want to go back to the SSP, I said, they told me they can recalibrate it, but I have to go back into service on Mars. I'm like, no, thanks. I'll take care of it on my own. And I want you in my business. So, I can tell you, Gary Nolan and the UFO and the radiology stuff, yes, a certain type of tech can cause white matter lesion damage in the brain. And he's trying to figure out what that is. I can tell you my Neuralink implants malfunctioned, and that's what caused my white matter lesions. And removing them solved the problem. So the UFO goes away, it's temporary damage, it gets healed, but it shows up, the evidence shows up on MRIs. And he's openly, publicly talking about it.
Yeah, that's pretty profound. And it's going to, it gives credit to a lot of the abductees who've claimed to have these anomalies in their body, and there's no explanation for it. Now that we have some sort of official explanation, doctors can start leaning that direction. Slowly, it's inevitably becoming the reality, the future we're moving into. It's just one step at a time.
Yeah. And the neurologists were telling me there's nothing that could physically heal these lesions, because I had memory problems, I had vision problems, I couldn't remember anything. I was like, I'm a library technician, I'm a researcher, I need my brain, I need my research capability. So I had medical information downloaded from my Neuralink implants that I started using hypnosis to retrieve, because the implants were removed, but the memory of the medical stuff stayed. It was in deep hypnosis that I retrieved. If you do certain type of plasma therapy, subcutaneous injections of plasma, it will heal the brain neurological damage, and that will be gone. Right. Like, okay. biological drug serums on Mars. That's what I was doing. As like, what is the equivalent of this on Earth? Plasma infusion treatment, subcutaneous immunoglobulin therapy. To this day, I still get it at the blood bank, and I transfuse it into myself, and it keeps me healthier and happier. Because I had autoimmune damage done by the reptilians, so it also heals the autoimmune system, the immune system.
Oh, very nice.
So it's like, this is why I got into hypnosis, to get some medical information out of myself.
Right.
That I can do something with medical knowledge, because I was working in cybernetics labs. I was dealing with medical research that I am not trained for, but it was downloaded into my brain by these Neuralink implants to allow me to do my cybernetics technician job on Mars. It's like, I need this education back. What's the fastest way I can do it? Hypnosis. So I went and got certified for hypnosis and past life regression for both. So I could do it on myself and others.
Right. And that's how, I mean, half of the information that I've shared has come from hypnosis sessions. And obviously, you know, take some of that stuff, take most of it with a grain of salt, because it's not like there's going to be any way to have solid concrete evidence of this stuff. But
one data point.
It's a data point. Yeah, but we can feel into it.
And that too.
You can feel into it. And does it resonate? If it doesn't resonate, then it's not for you, you know.
Well, if for me, I was using hypnosis to take actionable medical data and apply it on myself in a scientific way. And I had to explain it to the neurologist in a very simplistic way, so that somebody wouldn't be clued in that she's doing something a little extra here, you know. And the way I just took medical data research that's equivalent what it was in my, you know, hypnosis information, found the equivalent medical data here on Earth in terms that I could explain it to the neurologist to facilitate my treatment and get me going on my own infusions. I got some basic nurse training, got it done, do it every week, and it keeps me healthy. So
that's great.
But I have medical knowledge that I really shouldn't for my implants. I don't advertise that publicly, but that's what I have, and I use it to my advantage because it's actionable. The hypnosis stuff I wanted was actionable medical data. It wasn't my ET stuff, my SSP stuff, all these experiences. No, medical data that I can use on myself to heal.
Right. Well, so, and that's bottom line, that's really the most important. If we want to even function in this society, we need to be healthy, you know.
Most use hypnosis to get past life information, to get information about who they are, what they are. I just wanted the medical data about the cybernetic lab stuff. That's
and there's also like, you know, quote, miraculous healings that come through these sessions also, you know, via the higher self, and people experience that, and it's tangible sometimes, and you can't ignore that aspect of it either. So it's really beautiful that more and more people are working with that, because that's how these concepts even get brought into this reality.
And I've seen some interesting, tangible, traumatic healing happen from hypnosis sessions that I've done, but I use it mainly for memory retrieval. And just to deal with traumatic stuff that have happened to people through the ET contacts, through the abductions. Like, what was it? Where's the trauma sitting? Let's get this piece of soul retrieval back into you, so you're not traumatized by being stuck, by part of your soul being stuck in this frequency of trauma, retrieving soul fragments through hypnosis.
That's crucial. That's absolutely crucial. Like that, more than anything, people need to heal from, because holding on to that trauma is what creates these toxic behaviors and patterns and loops. So we can heal that, we can end that, and then you don't pass that trait on to your offspring. So it's very crucial, and thank you for doing that. We're going to go ahead and start wrapping this up, though. This has been absolutely wonderful. Thank you for joining us. Can you please plug any information, websites, links that you have?
Yeah, so my website is Messages from a Star Traveler. You can just type in the name and it pops up on, internet searches. My YouTube channel is a Cosmic Reality Show, and people can just reach me through the website if they want to contact me. And I also written several books. Everything is published on Amazon. That's all on my website as well. So people can have a look.
We'll have those links below. All of them will be below. So thank you so much for joining us. Thank you guys for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed this. Thank you so much for your support. We love you all. And until next time, have a great evening. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.